In this video, we'll be looking at how to detect user location in a Rails app. But before I get into it, I want to give a shout out to Scout APM for sponsoring this video. Scout APM makes it easy to debug your Rails application and eliminate N+1 queries and other performance related issues. Check their link out in the description below for a 14-day free trial. So getting back to the video now, there are many different reasons why you may want to capture the details about your user, such as the IP address or the country that they are accessing your app from. In the case of an online store, you could use that to display different default currencies. So in order to begin this, we will use the Geocoder gem. So the Geocoder gem helps us to retrieve the IP address, the country, and the city of that user who is using our web app. So in order to begin, I'm going to set up a default route for the home page. So right now we've got this empty Rails application and we've just added the Geocoder gem. So let's create a new path to the home page and we'll create a new controller for this called public controller. And of course you can also use the Rails generator to create the controller, but in this case, we are just using this controller to generate the views. We're not saving data in terms of, we're not creating data to input to the database or anything like that. So we're just accessing the views to set a home page. And I'm also going to create a new folder in the views called public. And we'll add a html.erb file for the index. Let's test this out. Let's try this page out to see if it's working. And our route is working correctly. So let's replace this now with some dummy content. So there's not going to be a lot of design in this application. I'm going to keep it really, really simple. We're just focused on showing the user details that come back from the Geocoder gem. So let's create a headline. And in this case, we're going to set up some very basic dummy information to represent a product. So I think one of the big use cases for using the Geocoder gem would be to detect the currency that user is using. So what the currency is in their country, which country they're from, and maybe even for security reasons like storing the IP address or doing something with that IP address. And of course you could also use the information to store the latitude and longitude of that user, so the coordinates for that user. And then of course you could do different things with that, like put a pin on a map or a marker on a map, or suggest locations that are near them based on their preferences in the application. There are many use cases, but probably the biggest use case I would see is based on a e-commerce store. So that's what I'm going to do in this example. Some dummy code and have some currency values. So I'm using the number to currency helper. That helper allows us to format the currency value correctly. Okay, so it's very simple right now, but we're going to clone this and make two more products. And the formatting is a little bit funny here, but I notice when I use this editor, sometimes when I close the file and reopen it, the formatting colors are corrected. So the color coding gets a bit messed up sometimes. What we want to do now is, once we have this currency set in the back end, we want to output it as part of this unit value in this number to currency helper. So these units will change based on the location of that user. So we'll also output the details at the top. And again, this is just for us to see. You wouldn't really have it like this in a live application, but it's just for us to debug and see what these values are. So we want to see the country the user is from, city, and then finally the currency that we are setting for that user. I'm going to rename these values to make them a little bit shorter. So the country, city, and currency. And while we are doing that, I want to remind you guys that if you enjoy the content on this channel, to subscribe so that you do not miss any future videos, and turn on the notifications, and you will always be up to date with the latest video that comes out. So on the rubygeocoder.com website, we can get details about how to use this gem a little bit more effectively. And there are many different use cases. You can even use it from the terminal. And in this case, we want to use the request. So the request body is set automatically. So the location value is added to the request body, and that is populated with the city, the country, the IP address, and some other details about the user location. So in our public controller now, we will create these values, these instance variables that contain the data that is part of that request location. So we're setting the country and the city, and you can see here that the country code value is available to us. And it would be nice if we have a currency value, but I don't think there is. I'm going to leave that there for now, but we have a different issue here that when you try to use the geocoder gem in the development environment, it doesn't work. So you need to only use it in the production environment. I'm going to wrap this in a conditional to ensure that we are using the production environment to test our code. And because of that, then we need to upload this to a server somewhere. So I'm going to use Heroku. So Heroku is pretty popular, and most of you guys have probably heard of it or used it in the past, but it's just a quick way to get an application online. So I'm going to add the code here to Git, push it up to a new application on Heroku. So we've created a new application, and of course if we try to open it at this point, it is just a blank dummy application. We haven't uploaded our code yet, but we can check the remote values for Git, and we'll see that Heroku has been set here. We can push our code to Heroku master. It will take a few minutes, but that will update the code on our app. And then we need to, basically when I set this application up, I forgot to disable the database. So I think we need to create a database, even though we're not storing any data for this example video. Run the Rails DB migrate should solve this. So let's reload the page now to see what happens. And we're getting a different error. So let's check the logs. And we can see that there is a problem with the currency value. So I don't think currency gets set in this at all. I don't know when I was creating this, I somehow thought the currency was part of the request value, but yeah, I think we have to set that ourselves basically. But that's fine. We can use the country code to control what the currency will be. So in this case, we're getting the city, the country information, and the coordinates, but we don't have the currency as part of this object. So let's create a variable to store the country code. So that will give us a 2-letter code to represent that country. So we can say if the country code is equal to a value, then we will set a currency value. So I'm going to do this with the country code of Australia, and we're just going to see if this gets set correctly. So if the country code is for Australia, then we will have the currency set to Australian dollars, and then otherwise we will set it to US dollars by default. So any other country outside of Australia should have a US dollar value. And in fact, we can actually just modify the country and use that as a variable. So when I'm testing this, I am based in Malaysia when I'm recording this. So we can see here that because I am not in Australia, it's showing as US dollars for the rest of the world, but it is showing the correct country and city. So let's fire up a VPN and we will set the location to Australia. So we can see again here that if it's Australia, it should have the currency of Australian dollar. User currency has changed, so has the country and city. So then the last thing we can do then is to make that value reflect in the prices for the products. So again, this is a really simple example, but just to give you a starting point for using geocoding. So in this case, since the currency has been used as a unit value for the currency, we will change it to a symbol. And we will output it for the unit. Let's just pick a random country and try first. It should give us a US dollar. Once we switch to Australia, now you can see that all of the prices have the correct value. And if you were doing this in a live, real world application, e-commerce type store, you would probably want to either store the different values for each product, maybe a USD value, a Euro value, Australian dollar value, or alternatively, you would want to get a exchange rate and apply that based on the rate each day. There's many ways you can do it, but knowing the user's location is very helpful in this case. So that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and also check out my sponsor if you're interested in debugging Rails applications. Scout APM makes it very easy to eliminate these kind of issues like N+1 queries and performance issues. So check out the link in the description for a 14-day free trial. And other than that, I hope you guys have an awesome day ahead, and I will see you all in the next video.